I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. As I settled into the quiet of my living room, the soft hum of the evening breeze whistled through the half-open window, stirring the autumn leaves that rustled restlessly outside. I glanced down at my phone, the screen illuminating my face in the dim light, my heart racing as I prepared to unleash my hidden fury. Days had turned into weeks, and the fire of anger within me had blossomed into something more calculated and vibrant. Standing next to me, Chloe smiled at my two young children on the couch, a picture of parenting perfection. Her laughter rang through our home like a carefully crafted song, but each note felt hollow to me now, a dissonant chord against the symphony of phony images she had so expertly choreographed. I watched her whip out her phone, capturing yet another moment to share with her followers. Say cheese, kiddos. Chloe's voice was bright, filled with the kind of energy that turned simple moments into social media gold. My heart sank as I forced a smile, eyeing the way she angled her camera just so, evoking a meme-worthy ultimate family moment while the kids laughed for the sake of the photo, not a hint of the chaos that preceded it. Instead of joining in, I found myself drifting deeper into my thoughts, feeling along the delicate thread of envy and the tension that had been stirring within me growing tighter like a noose. She had painted a masterpiece, a life that seemed idyllic, yet beneath those curated frames was a constant battle of emotional manipulation that previously chained me. Chloe arrived at my side, her eyes darting toward her phone. Did you see the latest comments on my post? Her excitement filled the room, but I was startled by the newfound weight of my own silence. I forced a laugh. Yeah, some of them are really good. People love seeing that side of you, I replied, my voice edged with restraint, the words slipping out like daggers cloaked in honey. The iciness of my own insincerity felt electric, wrapping around me like a cloak. Chloe beamed, scrolling through the endless stream of likes as a warm glow of satisfaction washed over her, spotlighting her need for validation. I just feel so lucky, you know? The kids are thriving and we finally have the perfect home. What else could a girl want? She looked dreamy, as though the picture-perfect world she proclaimed was simply that, just a picture. I nearly choked on the bile of my thoughts, pondering the truth buried deep beneath her flawless veneer. Oh, there is so much more, Chloe. I wanted to scream, but I swallowed it down, letting it mingle with my carefully cultivated rage. You're right, was all I managed to say, the intensity of my hidden plan illuminating every dark corner of my heart. It was then that the familiar sense of liberation washed over me as I envisioned the alter ego I had created. I'd crafted an entity that would slowly dismantle the facade that Chloe treasured. It began with a name, innocuous enough to float around like a ghost in the night. I had settled on Maplewood Observer, a name that suggested both anonymity and familiarity, someone who knew our town well. Instinctively, I could feel the rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins, every keystroke charged with purpose. I opened the social media account late that same evening, the glow of my phone bathing my face in soft blue light, casting shadows that reflected the chaos swirling within. The first post I created was simple yet potent, a screenshot of Chloe's latest picture-perfect family gathering, the one that deceptively showcased joy while the real story simmered beneath. How confusing, I typed with practiced calm, each letter flowing easily from my fingertips, a pulse that mirrored my mounting energy, when you expect immediate replies yet leave everyone else hanging for days. The tone was both innocent and accusatory, a reflection of the hypocrisy that had long encapsulated my life with her. I felt a surge of exhilaration as I hit publish, watching the digital ripple translate into the real world with each click. The notifications began to flood in, like fireworks igniting against the fabric of Chloe's carefully constructed life. Friends and family members responded with intrigue and disbelief, their footsteps on the path to discovery becoming more pronounced. Is this really who Chloe is? One person asked, and that single doubt sparked a fuse, lighting a fire under the surface that would soon blaze into the open, illuminating every dark corner of her deceitful existence. As the weeks passed, each post I crafted clung to Chloe's public image, slowly crawling under the skin of her carefully curated persona. If only they knew, I thought as the comments accumulated like a growing storm cloud, its thrum coalescing into something tangible. I refined my strategy, presenting intricate details of her contradictions, each one proving that behind her beautiful smiles was a mirror reflecting judgment, one she desperately avoided facing. I relished the thought of Chloe's inevitable reaction, how she would crumble under the weight of transparency as others began to connect the dots and whisper further behind her back. Family gatherings became an altogether different experience. While Chloe came in blissfully unaware, my heart raced as I surveyed the room, my thoughts dancing with anticipation. I watched her laugh, the corners of her eyes crinkling, unaware of the growing uncertainty lurking at the fringes of the party. "Ella, come and help me set the table," she called, her voice bright and filled with delight. I nodded and moved toward her, forcing a casual smile while sinister excitement twisted in my gut. She seemed radiant in that moment, a brilliance that blinded her to the reality swirling around her. "Do you think they loved the photos from our weekend getaway?" She bubbled, wide-eyed with enthusiasm. I could almost taste the bitter resentment lining the edges of her glee. "I think you really captured the kids in those. They look so happy." I responded, my voice steady and indifferent, but inside my heart hammered with impatience, waiting for the threads I was weaving to pull taut. Chloe chatted away, unaware of how the whispers had spread and how the doubts began to take root. "People are so supportive," she sighed, dismissing it all. "You know, I don't focus on negativity, but it's always nice when they cheer you on," she proclaimed, while I fought the urge to laugh loudly in her face. I nodded, sipping my drink and maintaining the mask of composure. As the evening progressed, I stole glances at family members whose expressions danced between admiration and doubt, murmurs crackling like dry leaves beneath their smiles. "Did you catch that post from Maplewood Observer?" A cousin leaned in toward her, voice low but earnest, and my heart jumped into my throat at the sound of those words. Chloe froze, a delicate glass about to shatter at the slightest touch. "What post?" she asked, her words clipped and tight, the question escaping her lips like a trapdoor flung wide. Suddenly the air felt heavy with tension, and for a brief moment I reveled in the chaos that began to rise within her. "You know, the one that talks about how you always expect quick replies yet take days to respond, among others." It was a little, well, the cousin's voice trailed off, leaving an unasked question hanging between us. Chloe's face darkened ever so slightly, her brow furrowed. "I don't think it's anything to worry about. You know how people like to twist things," she said, attempting to stave off the impact that washed over her. But I could see the panic flip behind her eyes, the way she instinctively swiped at her phone in a desperate attempt to dismiss the intrusion. As I navigated the ebb and flow of casual conversation, a sense of triumph filled me. I was no longer the passive observer but the orchestrator of Chloe's impending downfall. The revelations I had stirred were like small tremors preceding an earthquake, whispers of truth that began to chip away at the walls surrounding her. Eventually, as laughter continued to flow around us, I bore witness to Chloe's unraveling. Her eyes darted back and forth, her usual easy charm slowly being siphoned away by the waves of uncertainty crashing against her. I settled deeper into my role, the puppeteer pulling strings in plain sight. Each tiny crack in her imperfect reality felt like a win, a delicious slice of justice wrapped in anonymity. Yet within that exhilarating control, doubt wove its way through the fabric of my thoughts, mingling uneasily with the sweet satisfaction of revenge. What would be left behind once her deception was unveiled? Families would fracture. Relationships would change. Could I bear the consequences of Chloe's facade collapsing? Or was I too far gone, too deep into the flavors of my own vengeance to turn back? As I pondered the unraveling of Chloe's life, a singular truth crystallized within me. I was ready to see how high the tide could rise, how ferocious it might crash against the pristine facade she had created for herself. I was ready to embrace the chaos, knowing that soon she would be forced to confront the storm that lay ahead, the tempest of her own making, the echo of every selfish action that had pushed me to this very point. With the tantalizing taste of revenge lingering on my lips, I caught the reflection of my own determination, whispering promises of satisfaction. I was a seed planted in the cracks of her illusion, one that was poised for a beautiful flourish. The stage was set, and I could feel the tremors of change waiting to break free. The day of reckoning arrived discreetly, marked by an ominous tension hanging in the air. It was a Sunday evening when our family gathered for dinner, a rare moment of togetherness that Chloe loved to manipulate. The dining table was beautifully crowded, adorned with our mother's favorite dishes. The golden brown roast chicken glistening under the soft light, the steaming bowls of buttery mashed potatoes, and a colorful array of vegetable medleys that had been arranged just so for maximum appeal. Conversation flowed as laughter filled the room, but I felt the weight of moments ticking by as my heart raced, anticipating the news Chloe had yet to receive. Knowing that my anonymous posts had gained traction, I watched her interactions closely, noting her facade begin to crack. As we sat around the table, forks clinking against plates made a rhythmic melody, punctuated by bursts of laughter and occasional chatter. I could smell the familiar scent of rosemary and thyme wafting from the kitchen, but it all felt distant to me, like a scene playing out in a movie. I was a vessel of anticipation, carrying the energy of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. I forced a smile through the festive chatter, but internally I was a restless sea, waiting for the waves of chaos to break. And then it happened. "Did you see what was posted about Chloe?" someone inquired, a casual tone lacing the question, but a flicker of intrigue was undeniable. My pulse quickened, those words hanging in the air like a tightrope stretched taut between us all. Immediately I felt a sly smile creep onto my face, painting an image of satisfaction that rivaled any dish our mother had prepared. Chloe was sitting directly across from me, her features perfectly poised, a portrait of calmness in a world where tension was mounting. However, as if sensing the shift in the atmosphere, her smile faded slightly, replaced by a look of curiosity that morphed into concern. I caught the tiniest tremor in her hands as she reached for her wine glass, the crimson liquid swirling dangerously close to the rim. She scanned the table, her eyes flickering over each relative with a keen intensity. "What are you all talking about?" she asked, feigning an air of nonchalance, but the slight hitch in her voice betrayed her calm exterior. My heart raced, a mix of anxiousness and thrill coursing through my veins. I wanted nothing more than to jump up and scream, "It is about you!" But I stayed silent, resolute in my position, basking in the brewing storm right before us. I leaned back in my seat, crossing my arms, feeling a sense of power wash over me. The room grew quieter, the gentle clinking of utensils fading to a hush as Chloe's discomfort thickened like fog rolling through a bay. Whispers turned into murmurs, and I could see how her gilded image, so meticulously crafted, was beginning to unravel. Eyes darted around the table, some lingering longer on Chloe than she felt comfortable with, as if they were throwing daggers at her perfect image. It was intoxicating to see her unease. She had wielded her power over us for so long, and now she lacked the grip she so desperately clung to. As she shifted in her seat, attempting to laugh off the inquiries, I couldn't help but relish the way her brows knitted together, betraying a creeping panic beneath her polished surface. Her lips quirked into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Come on, it can't be that bad," she quipped. I could hear the slight tremor in her voice, each word a struggle against the tide of reality that was closing in. "Chloe, you need to see this," one of our cousins finally said, her expression a mixture of pity and disbelief. "It's all over social media." And there it was. The revelation, like a stray bullet, had pierced through the pretense she so carefully cultivated. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I watched a cascade of emotions wash over her, shifting from confusion into that unmistakable flicker of rage. What do people think they know about me?" she snapped, her voice suddenly sharp enough to cut through the dense tension in the air. "You portray such a perfect life." Another relative chimed in, and there was something morose about their tone that made it clear they had started to connect the dots. But clearly, something is wrong if people are talking. At that moment, it struck me. Chloe was always the one in control, the one orchestrating the way everyone saw her, guiding the narrative like a seasoned playwright. But now her lines were falling apart, each whispered comment crashing down like waves assaulting her castle of carefully sculpted sand. It was exhilarating to see the storm of confusion gather inside her. "Sad, really," I thought with a glee I hadn't felt in years. "You are projecting a perfect life, but the truth is spiraling around you." The thought made me want to laugh, though I held it back, enjoying the simmering chaos unfolding in front of me. I observed her attempting to answer, but her voice remained shaky, revealing the fragility of her crafted persona. "I don't know what you're talking about," Chloe stammered, desperation creeping into her tone like an unwelcome guest. "I have always treated everyone with respect," she started, her faltering words betraying her scripted routine, but our family was no longer buying what she was selling. "What about the way you treated Ella?" one relative asked, and my heart raced at the mention of my name. "Do you remember the last family gathering? The way you snapped at her over that silly game? That was uncalled for." I felt my breath hitch, a mixture of anger and exhilaration flooding my senses. The tension was palpable, and I relished the moment her carefully constructed persona began to crumble. My heart soared at the realization that she was feeling just a fraction of the pain and anger she had inflicted on me and others. Chloe's perfect facade was breaking down under the weight of expectations, her controlled demeanor slipping with each cutting remark thrown in her direction. She could claw and scream all she wanted, but I knew the truth would echo louder than her outbursts. My satisfaction grew as I watched her face flush with color, a mixture of humiliation and fury, as she realized she was the focal point of scrutiny and judgment. "This is just ridiculous," she shouted, and the air felt electric, practically vibrating with tension. The booming sound of her voice sliced through the murmuring din, and we all fell silent, the room captivated by her outburst. I leaned forward, soaking in the moment. "Ridiculous, or is it just the truth hitting a little too close to home?" Chloe glared at me, her eyes narrowing, fury flickering like a flame. "You think you're so clever, hiding behind some unknown alias, why don't you come out and say it to my face?" The challenge in her voice set the room ablaze, humidity thickening with each exchanged glance. "Because you never wanted to hear the truth," I shot back, feeling emboldened. "You always preferred the flattery over authenticity." My own voice was steady, vibrating against the walls of the room. A bitter silence ensued, hanging over us like a heavy shroud. Chloe bristled, and it was then I thought I could see the cracks in her polished demeanor begin to deepen, the mask cracking in slow motion. "You've always just wanted to tear me down. This is all just jealousy and bitterness." You can't stand that I am successful while you're still. She never finished her sentence. A collective gasp flitted through our family as the accusation cut deep. In her desperate attempt to cling to her version of success, she had let her true colors bleed into the conversation. Successful? I retorted, the disbelief ringing through my voice. Is that what you call manipulating family and friends? Building a pretty Instagram page while trampling on everyone around you? The adrenaline coursed through me, each word empowering me further. Her face twisted in disbelief, shock transforming into anger, but now it was different. She was unarmed, left with nothing but the truth and her crumbling facade. The flush of color on her face was a sight for sore eyes, a testament to how her own words and actions had come back to haunt her. My internal glee felt almost uncontainable. Every judgment pass silently added weight to her downfall. The realization she had danced on a tightrope of lies while we had all been left reeling in her wake struck like lightning, and I loved every minute of it. We all know who you really are, Chloe, one of our aunts whispered, her voice soft but firm. And it's time you faced it. I could see that Chloe was struggling to catch her breath, her eyes wild like a cornered animal sensing danger. The more they pressed, the more desperate she became. Enough, she yelled, her voice rising again, tinged with panic. I watched with a mixture of anticipation and satisfaction as our relatives began to share their own moments, stories that had remained buried in the depths of gatherings past, moments where she had made headlines out of hurtful comments and dismissive gestures. The floodgates had opened, and the words felt like 1,000 tiny pinpricks, each one dislodging her carefully constructed image. There was no defending herself now. What about last Thanksgiving when you dismissed Mom's heartfelt gift? One cousin chimed in, her tone casual yet laden with condemnation. That dress was hideous and you know it. Chloe's voice was shrill, yet inside the utterance I tasted the fear of truly confronting the monster she had created. I sat back, arms crossed, relishing the spectacle of her downfall, the culmination of years of secret resentment being played out in a charged living room. I had finally exposed her venomous attitude that had poisoned every gathering before this one. Each person's ownership of their pain gave greater weight to her undoing, and I felt liberated, celebrating a taste of justice that had been long denied. Chloe's eyes, once bright, seemed to darken, and for the first time the unraveling of her perfect life was obvious to all. The mask had finally slipped, leaving her vulnerable. The flush of hatred and embarrassment on her face painted a vivid image of everything unworthy she was trying to cover. With every ounce of courage I had mustered throughout this gruesome but liberating meal, I felt like I was finally rewriting the script of our family dynamic. As her anger faded into shock and despair, I couldn't help but think how the once polished Chloe had now become the crumbled idol on which we could place our scars. I felt a deep satisfaction settling in my chest, as if each revelation provided a layer of protection over my own heart. This was not simply about revenge, it was about rightful reclamation. It was about healing and finally turning the tides on years of deception and emotional manipulation. As I took a long, deep breath, I felt the weight of the years lifting, a final curtain call on the masquerade that had stifled our family for too long. Chloe was now standing alone under the spotlight, and the storm had finally arrived. The air in the room was thick as Chloe's voice reverberated off the walls, her outrage consuming the space like an all-encompassing storm. I could feel my heart pounding within my chest, a steady drumbeat marking the rhythm of the chaotic evening. The dining room, once our sanctuary of laughter and love, transformed into an arena of raw emotions and aching truths. I glanced around at the faces of my family, their expressions a medley of concern and newfound clarity. My brother, seated at the end of the long oak table, sipped nervously from his glass of water while my mom's hand hovered over her heart, visibly torn between the instinct to comfort her daughter and the need to confront her at the moment. You all are turning against me. Chloe's voice rose again, thick with disbelief and a hint of desperation. As her words fell heavy into the silence, I could see the surge of anger igniting her features, the way her chin tilted in defiance, almost like a queen who had just been dethroned. Her eyes darted to each of us, searching for an ally, but I knew there would be none tonight. The beast she had nurtured within herself now roamed freely, and she was left clutching at thin air, grasping for the validation she so often demanded. Chloe, I said, forcing the words through a throat constricted with emotion, we have some serious issues and you can't keep dictating everyone else's reality. The calm in my voice acted like a sudden gust of wind, cutting through the rising storm. I felt almost weightless as the truth slipped from my lips. Nothing could quite compare to that moment of clarity, watching everything I had held inside for so long emerge like a breath of fresh air. No, you can't be serious. She shot back, her face contorting in disbelief. There was a mixture of surprise and anger there, but beneath it, a tremor of recognition flickered in her eyes. It was as if the reality I had just articulated punctured the bubble she had crafted around herself, leaving her flailing in the emptiness she had created. I continued, You've completely ignored the impact of your demands, how you force us into your whirlwind. We are not your puppets." With each word, I could feel the tension shift, like the creaking of a ship's hull as it began to right itself in the waves. I was terrified but invigorated, thrilled to finally have the opportunity to speak my truth. The room simmered with a stillness that often follows an explosion. Eyes shifted, some widening with shock at my boldness while others glimmered with a long-buried empathy for our sister. I wished for a glance of support from my mom, and when she met my gaze, I read a flicker of pride mixed with fear in her expression. This was the reckoning that Chloe had long prepared for, and yet here she was, standing on fragile ground. The facade she had maintained began to fracture, her expression shifting from indignation to vulnerability, like a flower wilting under the harsh glare of the sun. "You don't understand what I have done to keep us together, to keep everything in order," she spat out, her voice choked with emotion. Each word seemed layered with a bitterness and a hint of guilt, as if a part of her was beginning to recognize the chaos she had orchestrated. "It's not about keeping everything in order, Chloe," I countered, my resolve growing as I moved closer to my point. "It's about all of us wanting to be part of this family you always talk about. Being family doesn't mean forcing your will on everyone else." Her face fell, and for a brief second I saw a flicker of the Chloe I once knew, the girl who used to braid my hair and laugh at my terrible jokes. The one who shared my secrets and fears. Now that girl felt like a distant memory, buried beneath the weight of her choices. Her perfect veneer was fading, the painted edges bleeding into a deeper truth that could no longer be ignored. I just wanted things to be perfect," she whispered, her voice dropping to a fragile tremor. "I wanted to protect us." The irony fell so heavy in the room, a palpable sensation. "But you didn't protect us," I said softly, my heart aching for the sister I used to love but was so afraid of now. "You suffocated us." I felt the burdens of years unraveling, one thread at a time, and as each truth came into the open, the atmosphere shifted again. I could see my family it off into small fragments of conversations, the demands Chloe had placed upon us like a ghost hovering over our relationships finally laid bare. Each of us had our own battles, our own scars etched deeply into the fabric of our family history. As I witnessed this, the soft murmurs began to rise, voices articulating their own frustrations, their own sense of neglect under Chloe's heavy hand. My brother finally spoke up, his normally guarded demeanor now emboldened. "Chloe, I feel like I never really knew you," he said, his voice adult yet shaking with the remnants of trepidation. "You've always been the center of our lives, but everything always felt like it had to revolve around you. But now I want to feel heard too." Her eyes widened at the raw honesty spilling forth, and for a fleeting moment, hope flickered that maybe she was beginning to understand the depth of her actions. "It's just so unfair." Chloe cried, frustration blending into an almost childlike whine. "You are all turning this into something I never intended. I am not the villain here." Her words were sharp, but even as she protested, I sensed a crack within her bravado. "Maybe you should listen to us, Chloe," my mom added, her voice steady and firm. "We have all felt the pressure, the tension it has created in our family. We cannot keep pretending it does not exist. It might be hard to hear, but we want to be a family." I surprised myself by feeling my chest tighten with a mixture of sympathy and resolve. Watching her unravel felt at once liberating and heartbreaking. It was a complex tapestry of love and resentment, woven over the years until the threads became murky with regret. Her facade continued to crack, the anger and entitlement she wielded like a badge of honor now crumbling, replaced by an echo of vulnerability. "And what am I supposed to do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's change overnight, it's not that simple." "Chloe," I breathed, the words feeling both heavy and light, "growth takes time, but it starts with facing what you have ignored for so long. If you want to change, you need to take that first step, and that means accepting how you've behaved. You're not alone in this fight, but you must acknowledge the truth." The flicker of anger in her eyes shifted once more, now replaced by something deeper, regret. "I never meant to push you all away," she confessed, her voice breaking. The timid honesty in her tone pulled me closer, carrying the scent of vulnerability and chance. "I don't want to lose my family," she whispered, the walls she had built around her threatening to crumble as her vulnerability seeped through. I don't know how to do this without being in control." There was a long pause as the room grew heavy with this admission. The softness in her voice invited a wave of haunting memories, the laughter, the shared secrets at midnight, the things that had once bound us together like sinew. I could almost hear our childhood laughter echoing, a reminder of what lay beneath the surface of the hurt. "Control is not the same as love, Chloe," I said gently, hoping that she would hear the sincerity in my words. "Love thrives in freedom, not in shackles." "You've kept us close, but at what cost?" Tears welled in her eyes, unshed and practiced, but something in their sincerity rang true. They began to spill over, tracing rivulets down her pale cheeks. "I just feel so alone," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper now. Then let us in, I replied, the words slipping easily from my heart to my lips, a lifeline I was throwing into the tumult of her emotions. We need to work together, start building bridges instead of walls. Room changed, the sense of solidarity circling us like a protective shield. I could feel an undercurrent of hope rising amidst the wreckage of our family dynamics. Chloe's eyes shimmered with disbelief and yearning, an unshed ocean of emotion as she felt that first tentative connection. This might take time, and I don't know if I can do it alone, she murmured, her voice breaking. You don't have to, I assured her, my heart swelling with an awkward mixture of sorrow and hope. We will do this together. Just take it one step at a time. I watched her, waiting for her to embrace this new reality, praying that she would allow herself to feel, to grieve, and ultimately to heal. We were on the precipice of a new beginning, and I felt a bittersweet pang in my chest, understanding that change is often a jagged journey stitched together by the threads of pain and love. Would Chloe embrace this chance to redefine herself and rekindle the bonds we once shared, or would the fear of being vulnerable pull her back into her well-worn habits? Only time would tell. Either way, the night's reckoning had set in motion a journey that could very well lead us all toward a brighter future. I took a long breath, the air still tinged with hesitation, but also filled with the promise of possibility. The pieces of our family, discarded and broken, had finally begun to come together. Weeks rolled on after that chaotic family gathering, a delicate renaissance born from the rubble of our once unyielding relationship. Chloe began to drift through our lives like a ghost, lingering just on the outskirts of our gatherings, a remnant of the sister I once adored. The first time she joined us again was for my birthday, a tentative venture filled with unknowns. The air in the room buzzed with laughter as friends and family celebrated. The sweet aroma of freshly baked cake mingled with the rich scent of coffee brewing in the corner, a comforting backdrop to what felt like a fragile negotiation of unspoken emotions. I watched as balloons bobbed gently against the ceiling, each one representing an unarticulated hope I dared not express. I felt a nervousness mounting despite the joy around me, wondering if the bitter shadows of our past would rear their ugly heads again. When the door creaked open and Chloe stepped inside, a wave of uncertainty washed over me. My breath caught for a moment. She seemed different. A soft, diffused glow surrounded her, and an unexpected calm radiated from her presence. I could almost see the change, like spring sunlight coaxing the first flowers from the soil after a long winter. Tentatively, we exchanged glances. I half expected the usual sarcastic banter that often punctuated our conversations, but instead there was a subtler energy, an effort to connect, almost shyly. I could feel her humor trying to creep back into our shared space, but it was muted, as though she was testing the waters cautiously, unsure how to navigate the new realities we both faced. As time stretched, we mingled in the living room, the echo of laughter dancing around us, but it felt tinged with an unspoken tension. I watched her engage in conversation, interacting with a warmth that tugged at my heart. Yet the dominance she once wielded over our family discussions, the way she would slice through conversations with sharp wit, was noticeably absent. Instead, there was an intriguing vulnerability in her demeanor. When our mother asked her about her family, I braced myself for one of her classic deflections, but it came and went like a thunderstorm that calmed unexpectedly. Chloe paused, her lips pressing together, revealing a slight tremor of uncertainty I had not seen in years. After a few moments that felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. I have been working on myself, and I know I have room to grow. The words, infused with an impressive warmth, were softer than I had ever sensed. I could hardly believe that those words were uttered without the trademark defensiveness she wielded like a sword. In that fragile moment, I realized something monumental. Her vulnerability was an offering, a bridge extended from her side of the chasm we had long circled. Swallowing my own trepidation, I reached out quietly, probing the potential for a deeper connection than ever before. That's good to hear, Chloe. We all have things to work on. I felt as if I was cracking open a door long sealed, letting in fresh air that had hung heavy with bitterness. The tension that once graduated between us began to dissolve, the air around us softening. It was a little like watching winter turn to spring. I could almost visualize the frost retreating, revealing the rich earth hidden beneath. As the evening wore on, our conversations shifted from stilted exchanges into more fluid and real discussions. My heart swelled as I caught glimpses of improvement. I could see her messing with her hair, a sign of her nervous energy. But there was a sincerity in this new version of Chloe. She was fighting her old habits, struggling through them, and there was something beautiful in that struggle. It was like witnessing a bud attempting to blossom against all odds. As the weeks wheeled past, our family dynamic transformed remarkably. Gatherings became something to look forward to instead of an obligation to endure. Chloe began to show more accountability, speaking up honestly without skirting around thick emotions. I could feel the heavy fog of resentment alike lifting, clearing the air for something brighter. Is this what growing looks like? I spoke to myself on one particular evening, a playful smile lingering on my lips as I watched her interact with our parents. It felt like I was watching a garden bloom, a slow, relentless opening that promised petals of change and hope. One sunny afternoon, we all found ourselves gathered at home for a barbecue. Chloe stood near the grill, masterfully flipping burgers while bantering with our youngest cousin. You know, I was the best burger flipper in high school, she quipped, her laugh light against the backdrop of sizzling meat and cheerful chatter. I leaned against the kitchen counter, an amused smile creeping across my face. Since when? I shot back, the playful tone in my voice encouraging more of this light-hearted energy. Chloe feigned injury, her palm dramatically pressed against her heart. You wound me, dear sister. Don't you remember my culinary fame? Her levity filled the gaps that once echoed with tension. It added flickers of warmth to the gathering, breathing life into old memories of us teasing each other during family dinners. The ease of our banter felt refreshing yet uncharted, revealing layers of history I thought might forever be buried. As I looked around the room, laughter bounced beneath the ceiling, spreading like fragrance through blooming flowers on a breeze. It was intoxicating and beautiful. However, it was still an imperfect journey. I could observe moments when her defenses would attempt to erect themselves anew, flickers of the old Chloe threatening to surface like shadows in a dim room. There were times when impatience flickered in her eyes, but each time she worked through it deliberately. I noticed the way she took deep breaths, grounded herself, and reminded herself of the progress she had made. It was like watching a child timidly take their first steps, wobbling then regaining balance. The allure of biting words lurked beneath her tongue, hungry for a chance to lash out, yet she sidestepped those traps with a grace I seldom expected. One evening, while we both washed the dishes after a rather raucous family game night, I felt the shadow of the past linger near again. A space opened between us filled with unspoken understanding. I could sense her wrestling with something heavy. Do you ever think about what happened at that last dinner, the one that went completely off the rails? I whispered cautiously, feeling the warm water in the sink wash over my trembling hands. Chloe paused, her scrubbing slowing as she took a deep breath. Honestly, I wish I could forget it, she mumbled, looking down at the sudsy water as if it held better answers than I did. I put down the plate I was holding, wanting to meet her eyes. But it happened. It was brutal and ugly. Remember how we fought? You cut me to the core. Chloe's gaze lifted, meeting mine and fixing in that moment as if a thread linked us through shared pain. I know, she said slowly, her voice low. I was a mess, and I've been thinking about that ever since. There was sincerity woven into her acknowledgement. I clenched my teeth, the memories sweeping me up like a rogue wave, but I sensed something familiar, a chance for redemption. What made you want to change? I asked, my heart racing. What triggered this awakening? Chloe leaned against the kitchen counter, letting the towel hang loosely from her fingertips while searching for words. I realized I had built walls around me and they were crumbling. When you stood up to me, I thought I was losing everything, but instead I lost myself in anger and bitterness. It felt like I wasn't living, I was just existing. Her voice wavered at the end, vulnerability spilling into the air around us. I could feel my heart soften. This was progress, the light fighting its way into darkness. I wanted to embrace her in that moment, to wrap her in the warmth of shared understanding. As weeks morphed into months, it became increasingly clear that she was altering her perspective. The moments of clarity grew in frequency, illuminating the path to unity between us. One evening after another family gathering, I found Chloe and our mother sitting outside on the porch, the golden glow of the setting sun casting long shadows. I paused for a moment, listening to their conversation as laughter and warmth sprinkled the air between them. My heart expanded with pride. Witnessing this moment felt like being a spectator at the resurrection of something extraordinary. They talked about mothers and daughters, balancing her past mistakes with little anecdotes of joy. Remember the time you thought you'd be a rock star? Mom, Chloe teased, her tone playful. What did you call yourself? The singing queen? My mother burst into laughter, shaking her head with fond exasperation. You never let me live that down, do you? Their playful exchange was light, devoid of the dense tension that used to hover above us, and I wanted to believe that this small moment was part of a much larger journey. Slowly, something shifted at the core of our family dynamic. It transformed from a tense battlefield into a garden blooming with connection and reconciliation. With each passing month, my heart swelled with hope when I considered how far we had journeyed together from that dinner gathering filled with chaos. The lessons of forgiveness weighed heavier on my heart than my own anger. I realized that my actions had forced Chloe to face the truths she had long buried under layers of denial. Scars from the past would always remain, but there was a certain beauty in navigating life as sisters once more, sculpting trust from the heartache we had endured. Despite the lingering challenges, our bond began to flourish amid the painful truths we had confronted. Whether we were celebrating birthdays or sharing quiet evenings of reflection, it took on a harmony that had long eluded us. I felt liberated not just from my own storm, but also from all expectations of perfect families. In those moments of laughter and conflict, we revealed ourselves to each other in deeper and truer forms. A lesson had been learned through the storms of our past. They could not be avoided, but they no longer needed to define us. Epilogue. We faced the worldly pressures together, rising and falling like waves in a tide, our intertwining fates acknowledging both our shared truths and our personal journeys. I had learned that healing does not follow a linear path. It weaves like a tapestry, rich with vibrant colors of love, loss, and laughter. As my heart settled into a quiet acceptance, I marveled at the beauty of this interconnectedness. Bridges had been rebuilt and strengthened with compassionate patience, and while the storms would come again, we were prepared to weather them together.